I know Baldy put up that one clip where Jalen Hurts has got the ball for 6-7 seconds.
Yeah.
The ball's not coming out.
Doesn't come out. It's all off schedule, John. That's that's the other thing I think that's such an interesting part of this conversation is I don't say this as a knock on Hurts at all, but he's a tough quarterback to be a coordinator for because Ben Johnson was speaking this week and they asked him about like 50-50 balls. Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen. Back with you live for another 2-hour show. It's Dallas Cowboy week coming up here, and week number 12. Eagles coming off a big win Sunday night versus the Detroit Lions. That's 2 straight versus 2 big opponents in the NFC. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, my friend?
Doing well. Had a bit of a rough day yesterday, but bouncing back. Never like to wake up to a flat tire, but that's
how'd that go? How did the flat tire excursion go?
It's fixed.
All right. Well,
I took the opportunity to get because I'm late in getting tires, so I got all 4, but took freaking half the day.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Yeah. I did not see. I was not there for the first time, by the way, this year for the coordinator press conferences. So.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, because Vic did speak. Did you have a chance to hear them though? I know you didn't get a chance to get a question.
Yeah, I get the transcripts and I, read through them and all that.
Anything stick out, John? Vic spoke. Patullo spoke. It's funny how he's become such a hotbed. I don't know, John. Maybe it's you broke me, but I see these social media posts and I'm just like, I don't know what people are talking about.
He's the scapegoat. Like I always criticize people for scapegoating people, including Jeffrey Lurie, up to Jeffrey Lurie, because he will scapegoat people if they don't reach expectations. And, at the same time, they'll talk about it's the ultimate team game and it's not one person, which is the correct response. But, people it's human nature to want to point to one thing. Oh, if you fix this, everything's fine. There's no empirical evidence for that, but people believe it. Even though you went through the Sean Desai experiment on the other side of the football, and that was a disaster when they moved on from him, and it got even worse. So I get it every day. Oh, Scott Lepler should take over because of his Bowling Green experience. You don't even go to Jason Michaels, been a coordinator in this league. Like, what are you going to do? What do you think you're going to do? There's so many people. Well, go get Brian Daboll. Go get Mike McDaniel. If he gets fired, he's not going to get fired now. But you get the point. They want the big name who it coming in mid-season.
Yeah, right.
It's absurd.
Not the right move. Yeah. Brian Daboll was the coordinator at Alabama the season that Jalen was benched in the Super Bowl.
Well, he's very close to Nick Sirianni. And guess what? If they lose in the first round of the playoffs, that might be a conversation to have if you're going to.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that's his history with Jalen. So I don't know if they're the best fit, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to vet that out down the road. But my point bringing it up, I don't want to vet it because it's silly. It's silly. Right. To think you're going to shift an NFL offense in week 12. And by the way, similar to 2023 when they moved on from Sean Desai, they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's like nobody wants to blame the players. And here's how I'm gonna reverse it and start from scratch. Saquon Barkley's not the same player he was last year. A.J. Brown's not the same player he was last year. Every single piece on that offensive line is worse than it was last year. Every single one of them. Now, there's different levels. Jordan's still playing at a high level. Last year, they PFF graded him as the best player in all the football. He's not playing at that level. Lane Johnson, slam dunk, first ballot Hall of Famer, not playing at the level he played at last year. Landon Dickerson, not even close because of the injuries. Cam Jurgens, not even close. Tyler Steen's actually been a nice surprise, but he's not Mekhi Becton. The tight ends are brutal in the run game specifically. When it comes, and so much of the running game is them getting blown up, by the way. That's part of it. Like, at some point, you got to look at the players. I love Amik Robertson, and here's I think he's a way better player. I've noticed him last year when they had all the injuries, and I said, "Boy, that's one of those things where they found a guy who can play because they were forced to play him." And sometimes that happens in the
Yeah,
NFL.
right. Exactly.
But Rock is saying, with all due respect to the Temple people, I mean, AJ's not getting away from these guys. He's not getting away from them. And man cover, and all they do is play press coverage. I'm watching this game again. I'm like, he's blanketed. And then, of course, the quarterback. With the back-to-back weather games, they're now 28th in the NFL in passing, which is pretty awful. Last year, they were 29th.
Do you think it's become as simple as the offense has been so, below average in passing for the better part of 2 years now that 5 guys on the offensive line are never going to block 8 guys in the box, John? I mean, just too many guys in the box, and they don't trust the threat of the passing game, and it's become a lot harder to run. And now that problem has compounded all offensive problems, and now you have this even more clunky, even more ugly 2025 offense as compared to 24, where they were able to run the ball.
The only difference is the running game, and the running game last year was historic. So that's definitely a part of it. But it's interesting because in pass protection, and Fred had some problems in the second half with Aiden Hutchinson, but that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The pass protection was unbelievable. It was like night and day if you look at Detroit pass protection trying to hold off the Eagles and the Eagles guys holding off the Lions. It was really a good day from a pass protection. I know Baldy put up that one clip where Jalen Hurts has got the ball for 6-7 seconds.
Yeah.
The ball's not coming out.
Doesn't come out. It's all off schedule, John. That's the other thing I think that's such an interesting part of this conversation is I don't say this as a knock on Hurts at all, but he's a tough quarterback to be a coordinator for because Ben Johnson was speaking this week and they asked him about like 50-50 balls. And he's like, with all due respect, like I don't game plan for 50-50 balls. I try and scheme players open to exploit coverages in the defense. If Caleb runs out of the pocket or the play breaks down, that's when you identify single coverage and you give your guy a shot. Like Jalen is all off schedule. And my point with that is Kevin Patullo you can't game plan for that. You can't draw up a play for that. You can't do anything about that. Kevin Patullo can only give the route where the ball's got to come out on the 5-step drop. It doesn't come out. It's a tough thing to do. That's not to take away from Jalen because I think he adds a lot with those off schedule plays, but it does make it a lot harder to be an offensive coach on this team, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're exactly right. And I tried to explain that for years. You don't game plan off schedule stuff. So and I often talk about it when people would say, "Well, Jalen struggles in practice. He's gotten to be a better practice player, but early in his story, he wasn't a very good practice player." And I said, "Well, he would get frustrated. He would get frustrated because they blow the whistle. They don't let you because they're trying to protect you in training because it doesn't matter. So, they're blowing a whistle. Somebody gets near him." He's sacked. There's no way he's getting sacked in a game. He's just going to escape and go make a play.
Right.
But that's to the point of would the coaching staff like a different style of quarterback? And my answer is, again, if you give him true serum, yes, because you don't game plan for off schedule. You can't.
Right.
Now, you can do some things. You have to teach your receivers what to do in scramble situations. Make sure the spacing is as good as possible and make sure there's a lot of things technique wise you have to do in those situations that you do have to teach, but ultimately it becomes sandlot football, for a lack of a better term, where it's just a guy go and make a play. And I'm glad Ben said that. I didn't see it, but yeah, because he's dealing with the same thing and with Caleb Williams. Who's a tremendous athlete and makes some of the best throws you'll ever see when he's flushing right and just about to go out of bounds and he just flips it down the field 30 yards on the line. It's pretty impressive. That's not in the game plan of the Chicago Bears. So to his point, yeah, you don't when for instance, when you throw, which has been very successful to the Eagles, and I talked about this in the lead up to the Super Bowl last year. If you remember, I said, F it at this point when the blitz, because they struggled with the blitz and they've been better against the blitz this year, extremely better. Last year was a really, really big struggle, which is interesting. There's an obvious area of improvement, which
Right.
people says there's an obvious area of improvement. Last year was so bad. You remember leading up to the Super Bowl, what I said, just throw go routes. That's essentially giving up. And you're saying you're throwing a 50-50 ball, but you're saying my guy's going to get it. As a coaching perspective, it's like, well, we can't do what we need to do, so just give him a shot. And often it worked. But yeah, I think with the two biggest playmakers on this team, who are no longer the two biggest playmakers on this team, because it's probably this season, it's probably Devontae, even though he's coming off his worst game. The two biggest playmakers on this team by perception, by far, are Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown. They're not playing well. That is really difficult for people to say, never mind agree with. They're not playing well.
Do you think AJ Brown has lost his step?
He's not what he was. So now he claims it's not injury related, but he's dealt with the knee. He had a really difficult time playing through with that knee. He's dealt with hamstrings, multiple hamstrings. Maybe it is injury related. Hopefully it is injury related. If it's not injury related, it's even worse, because that means he has lost a step. But they're not playing well.
Chad
And
Ochocinco, John, was speaking, and I wonder if this has something to do with AJ. He said, I can tell what AJ is about to run from my couch, and I don't watch tape. That means I
yeah,
think
I
that's
saw.
coordinator.
Well,
So,
I mean, look,
I just think that's interesting where it's like if it's become, because they do run this risk averse, there's not a whole lot of variation to the routes that they run. Has it become simple for Meek Robertson, who watched game tape all week, to say, okay, AJ's going here? It's a lot easier to stick with AJ Brown if you know where he's going,
Yeah, well, it's the same though. So what's the difference? Look, they're conservative. They don't do a lot of things that I agree with, but it's the same as it was last year. So what's the difference? He certainly beat one-on-one coverage. Now he can't beat Meek Robertson and Rocky Sin.
Yeah. Rocky Sin had a good night, I thought.
Would have had a better night if they didn't screw him. But
Yeah.
who knows what happens? I still don't think they're going to score, but because of how good the Eagles defense was. But and by the way, I'm comparing AJ to his normal level of play. Of the two, Saquon's not been good. AJ's not been good compared to his his former level of play. Still good, but just good, like just a good receiver, not a great, not a second all team. Saquon, I mean, I'm at the point with Saquon, obviously the touches took something out of him, especially when you see Tank Bigsby behind the same offensive line explode. And I'm not one of those people because throw Tank in there. No, no, because the more he plays, the more he's going to get exposed. But just from the pure explosiveness, I mean, who would have predicted that? Tank Bigsby's more explosive than Saquon Barkley?
Yeah. Small sample size, but you're not wrong. Just feels like Barkley's looking for that home run too much this year. Just the eye test from him.
Well, that's part of it. That's part of it. That's definitely part of it. But I
you know what I mean?
also
Like
think
last year, he was so patient as a runner, and sometimes those holes just open up and boom, he exploded through them. Now it looks like he dances a little bit, waiting, and they don't come. Versus Tank comes in there and he's just like a bat out of hell. Boom, get downfield,
And the Grant Calcaterra, Kylan Granson duo, as
gosh.
Playing 12 you can't play those guys as blockers.
Maybe JD3 was right about Harrison Bryant.
Well, I don't know how Harrison's doing, but he couldn't
No,
be much worse. I'll tell you that. As a blocker, I still think Grant is a pretty good receiver, but they don't use him anyway. So what's the point? To me, but you have Cam Latu, who the one thing he's proven he can do is block. Why isn't he in there? I know McLean's been on that this week. I wasn't there yesterday because of my tire issues, but why isn't Cam Latu? Why you move him to fullback? Let him play tight end, what he is, and let him block. So there's plenty of things that you can criticize the coaching staff for, and I get that Kevin Patullo is the designated scapegoat. He's an easy scapegoat, and he's going to be sacrificed if you don't reach the pinnacle of what you're trying to reach. And that's easy, but that's not going to fix anything because right now, and I just ran down the list of players, other than Devontae Smith and maybe Dallas Goedert, everybody on offense is worse than they were last year. Every single one of them. And Tyler, has played better than I expected, but he's not as good as Becton, especially in the running game.
That almost seems like a very improbable coincidence, almost an impossible coincidence.
Well, they're getting older, and there, if you want to blame the coaching staff for not coaching them up correctly, but I don't know, you really think Lane needs a lot of coaching up? You really think Landon needs a lot of coaching up? I mean, that's injury related. Cam's injury related. Jordan's just coming off an historic season to being just really good. So it's not, there's levels. Jordan's still playing really well.
It's pretty hard to replicate what he did last year.
So, but I keep going back to the point that everybody just created in their mind what this offense should be. And there's no evidence that it's ever been that offense. Ever, from a passing perspective. Running game, different conversation.
The other thing I think that's complicated for Patullo is you got this risk-averse approach that's been, that's been implemented by the head coach. A quarterback who relies on off-schedule plays. It's like it's not an easy combination. That's like, again, I use the analogy of that's like telling Steph Curry you can't take a three-point shot anymore. You only get buckets at the rim. You're a limited player. You limit. I think Kevin Patullo is very limited in what he can call right now. Because he's got to abide by this risk-averse approach to not put the ball in harm's way. That's coupled with Jalen, who is not a timing or a rhythm passer of the football. I mean, that's a tough thing to call a game for. At least it feels like it is. I mean, I'm no offensive coordinator. I can't tell you that.
It ain't easy. That's why I say when you got a quarterback who can do what you ask him to do, that makes it. And I'm talking about that timing perspective you're talking about. It's a lot easier.
Any takeaways, real quick, John, before we get Mike Gill? Any takeaways from Vic Fangio yesterday? He gave a shout out to Eastern University, baby. Big shout out to Eastern.
Yeah, who was that who yelled out something about Rowan getting screwed? I couldn't tell.
I think it was. I'm not sure who it was that yelled that out, but
I like Vic's reaction.
Yeah, there's always a bitch and a whine.
Everybody whines about it. No matter what level of football, it's the officials' fault. It's everybody's fault but their own. That's just the nature of it, and that's what coordinators. Kevin Patullo is not the only one. Believe me, there's been coaches already fired. We talked about one of them, Brian Daboll. That's part of the gig. You're hired to be fired. The great Bum Phillips said that decades ago. You're hired to be fired. It's just part of it.